Zelensky will speak at the meeting of the United Nations Security Council and at the meeting of Parliamentary Assembly, where Ukraine is laying out a strategy and a plan that can work. And third topic, spending on its criminal war toy remains a priority in Russia, of course, said Putin. Good afternoon. These topics in more detail in a daily episode with me, Henry Keenan, and us UATV English, doing our best to bring the hard truth in easy terms for the whole free world directly from Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky will speak at the meeting of the UN Security Council and at the meeting of the Parliamentary Assembly. The president of Ukraine is planning several speeches in New York, as Reuters reports, with reference to the representation of Slovenia and the UN, which currently chairs the UN Security Council. Zelensky will speak at the Security Council meeting on Tuesday. It will be dedicated to, well, obviously, Russia's war against Ukraine in particular and rule of law in general. According to diplomats, the meeting of the UN Security Council will be held at the request of the United States, Great Britain, France, Japan, South Korea and Malta. At this time, world leaders will be in New York for the annual session of the UN General Assembly, and already on Wednesday, Volodymyr Zelensky speaks at it. Voice of America writes about it just as well as other media. At the same time, British representatives say that the meetings of the leaders will gather at UN General Assembly in September in New York will be exactly the place to agree on key issues of further support for Ukraine in the fight against Russian aggression. Again, obviously, but in particular, it will be also about the consent of some states that supply Ukraine with so-called long-range weapons to use them long-range weapon against targets deep in Russia territory, from where Russia inflicts always bloody and always destructive attacks on Ukrainian cities. For a long time, we have been trying in Ukraine to convince the world that strikes on targets in Russia not only fully correspond to Ukraine's rights to self-defense in accordance with UN Charter, but also can become main factor in forcing Russia to stop this criminal war.
The only way to counter this terror is with a systematic solution, and this solution is long-range capabilities, enabling us to destroy Russian military aircraft at their bases. This is an obvious, sensible decision. We have already explained to our all partners why Ukraine truly needs sufficient long-range capabilities, and every such Russian strike, every instance of Russian terror proves that long-range capabilities are necessary and the range must be sufficient. We are expecting corresponding decisions, especially from the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, everyone whose resolve can help save lives.
Putin's new red lines, his threats on using Western missiles against targets inside Russia, have been echoed recently as a reminder that some Western leaders are wary of the so-called escalation or expansion of the Russian-Ukrainian war. It is how democracy speaks, yes. With different voices, we know that in Ukraine. Still, it is good to know that more and more leaders, we hear the voices of them, of those who say that Kiev should get everything it needs from its international partners to defend itself and force Moscow to give up hopes of a Russian victory being put to the war of attrition. Well, especially good to hear these voices, as it is exactly the voice of freedom, sovereignty, and the rule of law and order that speaks finally. The United States of America saw President Volodymyr Zelensky's plan to end the war. This was announced by the U.S. Permanent Representative to the UN, Linda Thomas-Greenfield. We think he's laying out a strategy and a plan that can work. And we need to see how we can facilitate that by talking to all the heads of state that will be here in New York. So again, we hope to achieve certain progress, the American ambassador said. She also added that the United States has never lost hope of finding a way to peace. This is what US President Joe Biden has been hard at work, I just quoted, on for the past year with the situation in Gaza and for more than 2 years dealing with the situation in Ukraine. Well, I really hope that it was just a diplomatic move or saying, and that the plan is not to just end the war, but to end the war just. That is the victory of Ukraine and the free world. After all, as Volodymyr Zelensky noted, Ukraine has prepared exactly the victory plan.
І сьогодні вже можна сказати, що вже по
Today, we can already say that our plan for victory is fully prepared. All points, all key emphases, the necessary appendices with details to the plan have been identified. Everything has been worked out. The most important thing now is to determination to implement it. There is and can be no alternative to peace, no freezing of the war or any other manipulations that will simply shift Russian aggression to another stage.
The president of Ukraine again emphasized that Ukraine needs only the obvious, reliable and lasting security. And this, in turn, will lead to the security of all of Europe. According to Zelensky, Ukraine's victory plan consists of 5 points, 4 plus 1, 4 the main points and one more that covers the aftermath of the war. The president of Ukraine plans to show it to the 2 U.S. presidential candidates who will participate in the elections in November, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and of course, the current President Joe Biden. Zelensky will consult with him how to strengthen the Ukrainian positions in regards to the Second Peace Summit. You know, diplomacy goes good when you are strong. Without a strong Ukrainian position to force Putin, the indicted Russian Tsar, will not take part in summit. That is obvious. Well, I personally highly doubt Putin will take part in any summit, especially peace summit. Too coward, too arrogant, too Russian. Just pick your reason for your own. Putin's beloved toy, a criminal aggressive adventure, illegal invasion of Ukraine. Spending on that should remain a priority in the Russian budget, says Putin at a meeting with members of the Russian government where the preparation of the draft budget for 2025 and the upcoming 3 years period was discussed. Well, discussed is not a proper Russian term. Proper Russian will be partly like Russian, there is no discussion. Whatever happens, there happens according to Putin. So, according to dictator Putin, in addition to increasing defense capability, the list of main areas of budget spending should include integration, whatever that means, of the annexed regions of Ukraine, as well as social support for citizens and technological development of the domestic economy, says Putin. The government has already allocated 60% more for the 2024 budget than the previous year and 3 times more than the pre-war 2021 level. The budget allocated 30% of all money for the purchase of course, weapons, and the maintenance of these weapons and, in general, armed forces, a record since USSR. Well, at least some record for Russia. The Kremlin plans to reduce defense spending over time, but at the same time, Putin is also increasing the size of his army. So reducing military spendings might never actually happen in reality. This is being done to spook Western countries, of course. Not sure that this spooking is working, and also Putin is increasing the army to 1.5 million active troops. That will double the cost of its maintenance. If early Russian contracted soldiers received an average about $4.5 thousand a year, now, taking into account all payments, they can count on income of up to $100,000 over 3 years' course. As the former minister said when he was in office, after the increase in the size of the army, almost half of Russian army will consist of contracted troops. If the current Russian way of financing its own army, taking into account other costs and expenditures, maintaining such a burdensome army will mount to a mind-boggling figure more than 3 trillion rubles a year. Keeping the current level of salaries for a long time may also force the Ministry of Defense of Russia to begin reducing other expenses like training, purchasing equipment or ammunition. Attracting new military personnel to the army will also increase the already high tension on the labor market, but it will be expensive not only in terms of salaries and social benefits, but will also actually require doubling the existing military infrastructure within Russia itself. For each new military division, it will be obviously necessary to build at least 5 barracks, from 5 to 10 usual housings for soldiers' families, as well as schools and other civilian infrastructure. Well, the associated costs may be exorbitant for the already overburdened defense budget. The size of the army said by Putin makes sense in times of war. And what happens after that? Such an enormously large professional army will look for new territories and capabilities. Just think about that. That was it. Thanks for your time. It was me, Henry Keane, and UATV English. We did our best to deliver the hard truth in easy terms for you out there. Please like, subscribe, and comment in return. Your voice matters as it helps Ukrainian voice to be heard worldwide. Please stay safe and tune for more. Goodbye.